Hello, I'm Jared.
And I'm Ebony, and this is his.
And hers, Warhammer 40K. Yay!
Yay! We're doing the end and the death.
We're doing the end and the death.
But before we get
Part
started...
one.
Yes, part one. But before we get started, I guess we should catch you up on where we are, where we're going. We're going to PAX.
We're going to PAX East. We will probably be there while this is
airing. Yeah, we'll be there. So if you watch this and you see us, say hi.
Yes, if that happens to overlap in any meaningful way.
For you.
Great.
We'll say hi, yeah.
Cool.
One of my published stories is getting turned into professional audio narration at Cold Open Stories, which publishes a new audio narration every Friday. So if you haven't listened to any of those, go listen to them. They're great.
Exciting.
So that'll be fun. We'll put the link in the show notes.
Yep.
Like and subscribe to this video. And I can't wait any longer to talk about the end and the death. So we're talking about it now.
Okay. So, this is Dan Abnett being as Dan Abnett as he can possibly be.
Yeah.
My God. I get why this book is 2 books. I'm not 100% convinced it needed to be.
No, I don't think so.
But I don't mind that it is.
Yeah, I wanted to get here for a long time, so I won't complain about it. But it gets verbose at times.
Oh my God. You need a full dictionary sitting next to you. Because there's so many obscure words in this book.
Highlight on my Kindle when I learn a new word, and there's at least 2 sentences in here where every other word is a new word for me. Like, never heard that word before. What does it mean? Now, some of them are made up.
Now, in most of the cases, they are in chapters that are from the perspective of Malkador. Quite literally the second smartest human being on the planet.
Which makes sense.
And I get it. And that, for me, works with his character.
Yeah.
It's when it's not his perspective, it feels a little weird.
You're like, what's happening?
It comes up a little time. Also, he decided to invent the term Astargian.
Astartesian. That's how I've been saying it. Astartesian.
I feel this is an unnecessary term to add to our lexicon, unless this is going to be a thing going forward now.
I mean, I feel like Astartes is a waste of it adding an extra word.
You don't need Astartes. You can just make it Astartes.
I guess. But of our Astartesian proportions, meaning really big.
Astartes proportions.
I guess. It doesn't sound as cool. Whatever. So we are directly after, well, it's a little timey-wimey, but we are directly after the events of Echoes of Eternity.
We think.
2 weeks, max, I would give it.
The warp has now almost completely engulfed Terra at this point.
So time isn't really a thing.
Time and space are both not really things anymore.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that if you think hard about in this book...
You're like, didn't that other thing happen first?
Or distances don't really make sense. And the book does mention this. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, I do kind of think Abnett just didn't want to have to think about any other author, in detail. Abnett is not... He's really not a great team player when it comes to, collaborative works.
I see.
And so I feel like he introduced this to basically write off any other incongruencies with the
time
books
or locations
in the previous
but also it works in the narrative, right?
It's fine.
Chaos is eating us.
I'm not super bothered by it, but it is noticeable.
Yeah, but you are right in the thick of it at the beginning.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are some gorgeous descriptions throughout this.
Yeah.
I think my favorite one at the start is they were crucifying titans on the Ultimate Wall.
Which
the Ultimate
is
Wall being one particular section of the wall around the palace. That image is just incredible to me.
Yeah.
The height and the scales involved in that are really quite something.
Yeah, and we'll probably not get into a lot of detail about individual small-scale fights. And by small-scale, I mean fights between titans, but also fights between some, random Imperial Army regiment and random Chaos unit.
There are some.
But there are lots of those, they're great.
In a way, it is similar to Echoes of Eternity, which did have a ton of vignettes.
Yeah.
Just sort of scattered throughout. I would say there's fewer of them in this book.
I would say probably what felt the most emotionally impactful in vignette form for me there are lots of vignettes of higher members of the Imperium trying to escape, right? Because billions of people are trying to escape this ongoing war, and there's one of a rich elderly lady who's just like, I'm dying in my palace.
Well, she's the one in the palace.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not the one I was thinking.
Okay, yeah, there are a couple of like really cool ones that just happen really quickly and pass you by that are definitely impactful and sort of put the scale in focus for you. That right, we're talking about a planet death, basically.
Right. So we've got a enormous cast of characters in this one.
Yes, and lots of them on the ground and not, but I guess we can start with where is everyone on the ground?
Where's everyone on the ground?
Yeah.
So the main groups that we had sort of on the ground from the previous books, we have Euphrates Keeler,
Yes.
who gets sort of a mention and a few chapters
yeah.
to discuss her.
Where she's just helping people move, right? So they're trying to move bands of refugees / survivors out of danger.
I don't actually think they're going anywhere, though.
No.
Like, she continuously refers to they're going north.
Yeah.
They're going north. Because of the whole time-space nonsense,
think they were going
I don't
anywhere?
think they're actually moving.
Yeah, and during that move, we get a visit from Katsuhiro, who is like a really
We get
character.
just a really quick shot of Katsuhiro.
He's still got that baby.
Still has the baby.
Yeah, that's good. Garviel Loken is on the ground. He was with Keeler.
He's just going all over.
Yeah, he was with Keeler, but he gets
At this point,
separated.
he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's trying to be helpful wherever the place he wants to be isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
The place he thinks he's going, he's somewhere else.
Yeah, so
he's just...
He pops in and out of a
flying
lot
all
of vignettes
around.
where he's like, oh, I walked through this door thinking I was going to fight these people in this house, and then I walked out and I was inside the palace, and then I went in this door and I walked out and I was on the processional, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of that happening.
We also have Fafnir Ron and Zephon, who I didn't think Zephon got left outside the Eternity Gate.
It seemed weird,
did.
But I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought he was with Sanguinius at the closing of the gate, but maybe he was in the rear guard of closing the gate and got left outside, or voluntarily left himself outside.
Yeah, maybe I'm wrong about that.
Yeah, and so they are doing a lot of on-the-ground fighting, and you say that this is a weird characterization of these two characters.
Yeah, so I just feel like there are... Fafnir Ron, I don't mind that much.
Okay.
I think he's fine. He's pretty badass. He's been pretty steady.
Okay.
Zephon, at least based on the characterization that we've gotten in Echoes of Eternity, he feels so much colder. He feels like just more one-dimensional
I feel
than
like
he was.
Rand comments on
He does
that. He
comment
says that
on
like
it.
all of them are getting ground down by this constant war.
But again, I feel like this is just Abnett didn't want to actually
Write that character.
write the character in a continuation of how
I guess
ADB did.
I feel like independent of their characters, though, their joined unit, like door-to-door fight scene, and it also has White Scar's characters in it, right? Like, these are captains on the ground trying to do a person-to-person, hand-to-hand combat clearing of an area. That, I feel like that fight scene is badass. It is broken up in multiple chapters, but I enjoyed it, and I don't usually enjoy an action fighty scene, and I enjoyed it a lot.
It was all right.
Yeah, you weren't thrilled. I was waiting for you to get there, and when you got there, you were like, eh.
With the exception of, like, I guess even No Fear has it a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't love how Abnett writes Space Marines.
Okay.
I think he writes great Primarchs, and I think he writes great normal humans.
Okay.
And I personally, he's the only author I feel writes Perpetuals decently.
Okay.
I don't like his Astartes.
Okay.
They just fall into a spot where they're either too human or too, like, cardboard cutout.
I can see that.
Although, there's a scene involving Abaddon and his, like, captains.
And that's great.
I did really like
Yeah.
that. I thought that was really well.
Yeah, Abaddon's on the ground, and he has some ideas about how things are going awry on the ground and how his father might need him back on the Vengeful Spirit, which we're going to get there why he thinks that. And he has this conflict with some of his, like, sort of junior lieutenants who want to stay in the fight.
I mean, they're captains.
I guess,
They're full captains of companies.
They want to stay in the fight and get glory or whatever, and he thinks that they need to return to the Vengeful Spirit. And speaking of Horus...
Speaking of Horus, so earlier on, we do get, similar to Malkador, we get a few chapters that are first-person perspective from Horus.
Yeah.
Horus is completely senile at this point. He believes it's nearing the end of the Great Crusade. He believes they're fighting, what was the name of the species at the end of Horus Rising?
The Lair? Is it the Lair?
No, the Lair is Fulgrim.
Oh, I don't know.
Shit. They're super... Everyone always talks about them and everyone always wants them back, but now I can't think of their name. They were like a high-tech species
who
like knew about chaos.
Yes.
Yeah. He thinks that they're still doing that compliance, and he still like refers to Argonis as Malkador. Mm-hmm. He's still calling out like for Sejanus.
Yeah.
Or sorry, not Malkador, Malagurs.
Malagurs. Yeah.
He's calling out for Sejanus. He's calling out for like all of these sons of Horus that are long since dead.
Yeah. He is losing it. Some of my favorite things are those like recordings from an interview with Remembrancers and Horus.
I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, those are great.
Yeah.
They're Mercedes Olenton's recordings, I think, and they're great.
Yeah, they some of Horus's first person perspectives are him speaking to Mercedes in one of the way early interviews during the Great Crusade.
Yeah, and like he has to go do something and he's like, oh, I was just talking to this Remembrancer, and all the other sons of Horus are like, what are you talking about, crazy man? Those are great.
Yeah.
And as part of his sort of crazy, he has turned the shields off on the Vengeful Spirit. Yeah, and so down on the ground on Terra, now that it has been noticed that the shields are off on the Vengeful Spirit, the Emperor and Malkador have decided that it's time to mount an assault, right? It's time to get up off the Golden Throne, and I think this is sort of the climax.
First there is a gathering of the forces
of good
that
loosely good
that are going with the Emperor to board the Vengeful Spirit.
So Dorn and Sanguinius return. It's very cool because like the Emperor's armor is getting brought in, right? And obviously the palace is this huge place, so there's this whole processional and people are awed. Things are happening that haven't happened for forever on the Imperial Palace, and Dorn and Sanguinius are returning to it from battle, right? They're getting called back to their father's side. And so you get to see them coming back from this battle.
We also get a great scene of Vulcan returning from the dungeons underneath the palace from the Webway Gate as a literal skeleton whose body then reforms around him after his fight with Magnus.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah. So they all get there, and the Emperor's like, we gotta go.
Yeah, so the Emperor, most of this is told from the perspective of Malkador.
Yeah. There's a little bit of Sanguinius with the Emperor in his mind.
I liked it a lot. Some people were saying that this scene was too, like, whiny Sanguinius, why do we suffer type.
I mean, he's kind of whiny Sanguinius, in my opinion, but I mean, it's his character. It's it's not out of character.
I guess.
Yeah.
You still, if you ever read Ruinstorm, you would think about that differently.
Okay.
I regret skipping over that one for you, because man, would that have changed your perspective a lot.
Yeah, he's a little bit whiny, but I feel like it's not out of character for him. And originally, the Emperor is like, Sanguinius is staying here.
That's true.
Yeah, he's like, he's going to take Dorn and Valdor, and they're going to mount this assault, this mission that they're calling Anabasis or Anabasis.
Anabasis. We're not quite sure.
Yeah, but they're going to mount this assault, and he wants Sanguinius to stay there, one, because Sanguinius just fought Angron and has a hole in him, which isn't great, and because he's Sanguinius, right? Having him leave would be a big deal. It would be a hit to morale.
They want him to be
the face.
The main face.
Yeah. And he's like, nope, I'm going.
Yep. Well, and that is because he believes that he is destined to die from being struck down by Horus, and that this is definitely that moment coming. Yeah. So he's not going to be denied that, essentially.
Yeah. And he goes. He goes with the Emperor.
But Malkador takes the Emperor's place on the Golden Throne.
Yep.
And I love this because Malkador basically sends out a psychic, like, last
list?
will and testament to all of his chosen, to all sorts, just being like, all right, here's all the things I still needed to get done.
Yeah. Please go do them.
And so we get his chosen,
Hassan, Xanthus,
Moriana,
Sudosi
are the main
yeah.
ones.
Yeah, but there are others, many others.
Xanthus and Moriana, for the Chaos fans out there, should recognize those names.
Okay.
But I won't spoil
We're not
that.
going to spoil it?
No.
Okay. Yeah, so they have things to do. One of those things that they need to do is the last time we saw Basilio Foe, he was getting taken into custody by the Imperium for his general badness, but also he has this weapon that he wants to build that can kill transhumans, can kill Primarchs. And so Basilio Foe has been held by the Custodes in the dungeons of the palace. And one of the Chosen's missions, Hassan, is to get Basilio Foe out of the control of the Custodes, because if you have the ability to kill Primarchs, they might not want the Custodes to have that ability, because Custodes don't love Primarchs or Space Marines, really.
Yeah.
They're not fans. So there's a little bit of that tension happening. And obviously Malgador's on the throne, so his...
What's very interesting about that is the weapon that Foe designed keeps getting referred to as, like, the Terminus.
Yes.
The Grey Knights, which are really Malgador's pet project and currently are in the warp training on Titan.
Okay.
They'll come out of the warp a few centuries later.
Great. Super useful.
Well, you know, they're specifically to fight against demons.
Yes.
They have a sealed box called the Terminus Decree. And it was never really known what it was, only that the Supreme Grand Master of the Grey Knights is the only one who knows what's in it, and that it's covered in iconography that is only found on the Imperial, like,
the Golden Throne.
On the Golden Throne.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. It might be that weapon, because we don't know, as of the end of this book, what happens to that
Some
weapon.
people believe it's that weapon. Some people believe it is the Talisman of Seven Hammers, which is the thing that Vulcan brought back to attach to the Golden Throne.
Right.
Which would cause the planet to explode.
Okay. Safe. So the Emperor... Constantine Valdor, Sanguinius, and Dorn are going to do this transport onto the Vengeful Spirit and bring the fight to Horus. At the same time, on the ground, the White Scars have control.
Yeah, so the White Scars, who have been control of...
Is it the Sky Orbital Plate?
No. Sky Orbital Plate has crashed.
Yeah.
Lionsgate Spaceport.
That's right, the Spaceport. Have been trying to shoot at the Vengeful Spirit this whole time, because they also can see that its shields are down, except they keep missing because... Chaos.
Yeah, so a message gets sent out to them being like, stop shooting, you know, we're sending a force up there. It's like, it's important that you don't shoot at it. And they're like, we can't hit it even if we tried.
Yeah, which is funny. So I guess they stopped shooting because their shooting wasn't working. And so for White Scar's character, it's the only one that obviously the Khan is in repose or in recovery.
Sure,
which we didn't talk about that. One of the last things Malgador does before he takes on the throne is like psychic force jolt Khan back to sort of alive.
We have confirmation that the Khan is going to live.
Yeah, which is great. But I
knew that already, but that's all right.
Ilya Ravelon has decided, like, they brought the Khan back to the palace, etc., and they were like, you can chill out now, old lady, and she was like, nope, still working. So she just assigned herself to Sandrina Caro, who is the human component of the head of Imperial forces, right?
So the way that even happened is because Bab Bastion fell.
Yeah.
So Bab Bastion had been the primary fortress from which Dorn and all of the other high strategic minds have been leading the siege on the loyalist side. And I'm a little sad we didn't get like a play-by-play of Bab falling.
Yeah, we get a quick vignette where it's like someone walks into what used to be Bab Bastion and there's bodies everywhere. So you know that everyone got killed, but you didn't actually get to see that killing or see Dorn leaving. And I would have liked that. But we're limited on space, apparently.
Are we? Really? I don't think we are.
Yeah, it's 2 parts, and each part is 700 pages long. We're limited on space. So the White Scar stops shooting. The Emperor transports, but...
all of the groups that went with it. So it's the Emperor and a few of his custodes, Valdor and the majority of his custodes, Sanguinius and his Blood Angels, and Dorn. Just Dorn, I think.
No Imperial Fists?
I mean, the Fists might be with Sanguinius.
Maybe, yeah.
But Dorn is alone.
Yeah.
Or the bodies that are around him are what was left of it.
So
they all get separated into 4 different groups.
And on the ground, no one knows where they are. Like, they don't get confirmation of transport. They get error 888, which no one knows what that means, but they also don't know where everyone is.
We all know
we
what
know
that
what it
means.
Yes, but like the humans
Korn
don't.
has interfered.
Yeah, the humans don't.
It's filling them with the bloodlust.
Only Dorn, though, really.
And...
Oh, yes, and the Custodes. Which is a major plot twist. All the Custodes turn on the Emperor, which is wild. We get a lot from the perspective of Casaltus. I want to say that's how you say his name. It's like a lot of C's and A's and E's next to each other. And he has been like a companion of the Emperor, and we get to see a lot from his perspective in general, but like he gets filled with this wild bloodlust and wants to kill the Emperor, and he's aggressively trying to fight it, and it's ripping him apart. And the Emperor knows that this is Horus. This is a Horus trick, but also they're trying to kill him, and they're Custodes.
Yep. So the Emperor has to take down the majority of the Custodes that are with him. He has to kill
a ton of them, and then he gets really angry and tired of it and decides to burn the chaos out of them, which seems really painful and aggressive. But Casaltus lives, and like a couple of other Custodes live, and then he's like, I'm definitely coming to kill you, Horus. He's real angry about it. And as I guess you would expect, because I think he really cares about the Custodes.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Arguably, and this actually goes back to, there's a short story called Two Metaphysical Blades.
Okay.
In which I think it's like either on the way towards Prospero or like at some point during Prospero. It's a discussion between Leman Russ and Valdor.
Okay.
And Russ says, like, we are his real sons. You are just tools to him. You could never have a connection as close to him as we do. And Valdor just sighs and goes, there's so many things wrong with that sentence, I don't even know where to start.
Okay.
And it might be my favorite sentence in all of 40K because I use it all the time.
It's great. Yeah. And meanwhile, Valdor and the rest of the Custodes forces are on the Vengeful Spirit, and they're fighting demons, obviously, because the Vengeful Spirit's full of demons.
Valdor gets attacked by more traditional demons of all kinds.
Yeah, it's cool. There's lots of names, and like there are definitely ones on there that like you could pull out of actual sources that are demons that are named currently. Yep. And he's got his cool weapon.
That reminds me. So before we go any further, earlier when Horus is still senile and he comes into like just the command deck of the Vengeful Spirit, they're looking over just like a map of the fight, and Horus looks, points at some units and goes, oh, what are those? And everyone else goes, we don't know. We thought you could tell us. And then Horus proceeds to look at it and go, oh, well, obviously that is, and then names every single named demon that has ever been in 40K. It's pretty crazy.
Great. Yeah, it's a long list.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Yeah, so Valdor's got his fancy weapon that when it stabs things, tells him about it. And we last see him stabbing a demon and learning all about it and probably not.
Well, he stabs the Vengeful Spirit.
That's right, the Vengeful Spirit demon. And I don't know how that's going to end for him.
No, if you've read any of the Beckwin series, I think this is going to play into that. This and the maps and paperwork that is sort of being read over by Cinderman at the end. I think all of that plays into where Abnett's Beckwin trilogy is going.
Yeah. And so where is Dorn? Dorn is in this yellow desert.
For several centuries.
Yes. In his mind, at least. Yeah.
Yeah. Dorn is wandering a desert.
Full of the corpses of Imperial Fists.
Yes.
Yeah. And eventually gets to a point where he's thinking about the blood and who the blood might be for.
Yeah.
And
it's like blood for the...
And he's like, nope. I'm
like,
Rogel
I am Rogel Dorn.
And I don't have time for that. Which is great.
It's really funny.
We never get to see the Emperor fighting Horus, which I guess we knew that because it's part
that wasn't
one.
Going to happen.
We do get to see Sanguinius do a lot of fighting. Sanguinius talks about how he spent a lot of time with Horus and a lot of time on the Vengeful Spirit.
So where Sanguinius ends up is interesting because he ends up on a version of the Vengeful Spirit that is exactly how he remembers it down to the very last detail.
Yeah.
there is zero corruption.
Yeah.
And it's just him and the Blood Angels
Except
fighting
it's, like,
Sons of Horus.
kind of empty and gross. Like, it's not as beautiful as he
Yeah.
remembers, but structurally it's exactly the same. That
Right.
allows them to, like, turn off things and do
Whereas,
stuff.
like, the Custodes are somewhere that doesn't exist on the Vengeful
Yeah.
Spirit. Dorne is not anywhere, period.
Yes.
And the Emperor,
I guess, is on the Vengeful Spirit. Yeah. Until we hear otherwise, we think he's on the Vengeful Spirit.
Right.
So Sanguinius is having this big battle. His sons are like, maybe you should tone it down because, you know, you're bleeding. And he's like, nope, gotta find Horus. So that's where he is. Meanwhile, back on the ground, Kirill Cinderman and Bothark Mauer.
The Grand is Mauer the Grand Pro, like the Marshal?
Yes.
But is it like a High Lord Marshal or just a regular one?
I think it's just regular.
I don't remember.
She and Kirill are in the Hall of Lang because Cinderman has this idea that they need to find some sort of text because obviously he's a bibliophile and into those kinds of things. But he thinks that they can find something in what is basically the Emperor's private library that will help them fight chaos. And while they're in there scaring the crap out of an archivist and asking her to break into special archives that she's not allowed to go in, but everyone else is dead. So she does it. Garviel Loken shows up and he's like, man, I kept trying to get to this place and I kept ending up outside of this building. So I just gave up and decided to come inside. And inside is Kirill Cinderman. And obviously they know each other. And so he joins their search for whatever it is that they're looking for. And so that's happening in the Hall of Lang. Back in the Imperial Palace, we left Basilio Foe in the care of the Custodes. He is being guarded by Aemon Taramakian, who is a custode who's charged with guarding Basilio Foe's life. Mm-hmm. And Foe has made his weapon, and Aemon thinks his duty is over. He's supposed to turn him over to these other types of custodes who show up.
Well, Foe kind of tricks him and gets
him down, which I think is really good. So Foe is like, well, you're in charge of my life, and everything is weird and there aren't really any clear directives. So, like, how do you know that these guys are actually the guys that they say they are and I'm supposed to be with them? And Aemon is like, well, maybe that.
On one hand, like, I do get it.
Yeah.
I can understand why it's cool. On the other hand, part of my brain just goes, this feels like a Looney Tunes sketch.
It does. It was a little silly, but it worked. And it's funny because there's a lot of internal from Taramakian about how Foe is dangerous and letting him talk is dangerous and you shouldn't listen to anything he says.
Yeah.
And then he listens to him. And so he sends away those custodes and they get met by Hassan and Andromeda 17, who they collect from somewhere. Not sure where she came from, but they have Andromeda 17 and they want to take Foe on behalf of Malgador to have control of that weapon. So that happens. Yes.
There's a whole other group we haven't talked about yet, and I think it's the last group that we're missing.
Yeah, we are missing everyone. Oh, no, there are two groups that we're missing. Go ahead. You do the Perpetuals.
Okay. So Oleanus Pearson, along with John Grammaticus.
I didn't forget them. I just don't like them. But go ahead.
Urta, someone with a K, a bunch of other random folks.
And like a robot.
Litu, who's like a...
old space marine. Like
he's a prototype space marine. And Alfarius. Are all like traveling through the desert.
Yes.
And I actually really like this part because we find out that our Alfarius is Ingo Pesh, who is a known character and is being controlled by Urda.
Yes. The witch.
Yeah. It's not Urda.
It isn't Urda.
No.
I forget her name, but Acte. It's
Acte, thank you.
Yep.
It's being controlled by Acte, and that all of the Alpha Legionnaires that were secretly hidden on Terra had a whole bunch of different keywords to trigger what mission they'd be on.
Yep.
And he got triggered to the mission to take control of chaos, which is not a great mission for the Loyalist forces.
No.
So unfortunately, he gets a proximity mine attached to his chest.
And they stick him.
And he just has to stay there.
Yeah. And the Perpetuals do make it to the palace. But it's after Anabasis has started, so the person they're trying to talk to, the Emperor, is gone. Malcador's on the throne, not talking to anyone, so they get stuck talking to Vulcan, who's like, what? No one has time for this.
And what I was surprised on is I thought at the end of this book they would be teleported onto the Vengeful Spirit. But that didn't happen.
But other people get teleported onto the Vengeful Spirit.
Not by choice.
No. Kind of by choice.
Kind of.
By choice, yeah.
I wonder if they're just going to use the Athame to get on.
That's what I was thinking, but I don't know that they still have it, because then they say it doesn't work.
It's just in a box.
Oh, it stopped.
Take it out of the box.
Okay, it stopped doing the things, because they had to, like, walk the last bit.
I think because if they tried to use it again, like, because it goes through time and space, there's the issue of, like, all right,
jumping.
You might be in the right place, but you're 1,000 years
in the future
early or
past.
late. Yeah.
Okay. No, the other group that I was thinking that we left out is Corswain.
Oh, right. Yeah. like I said, there's a lot of
all
characters.
All the characters are in this book. Yeah. So Corswain and Zahariel.
This might be the only Space Marines that Abnett writes that I really like.
Okay. I really did enjoy Corswain.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought he did an excellent job giving characterization to Corswain and having this sort of almost final stand at the Hollow Mountain.
Yeah.
Or
against
the
Death Guard.
Against the Death Guard.
Which also Corswain has tasked Zahariel to put together whatever is left of their version of librarians, because their actual librarian got murdered, and try to relight the Astronomicon, right? Because that is what Corswain is actually supposed to be doing, defending the Hollow Mountain and relighting the Astronomicon so that Guilliman can find his way to Terra. And so that's happening, but while that's happening, Typhus and the Death Guard are attacking the Hollow Mountain. And we don't actually see the conclusion of that fight, but it is happening.
It is happening
acutely.
Now, what's interesting is Zahariel, who is on the side of, well, I know it as the Ouroboros. It is the being that exists at the center of Caliban. Might be a chaos demon, but
unsure if Zahariel is good or bad.
Has decided that in order for his plans to continue, Horus can't win.
Yep.
So for the time being, Zahariel has decided to take on his new role, which I believe he stole from the original owner, to become Cypher. And Cypher shows up as this sort of legendary being of the Dark Angels to bring Corswain and the others back, to raise their morale and keep them going. So that's still ongoing.
Yes. Back in the Hall of Lang, they are reading books and trying to figure out what to do. And in the process of trying to figure out what words they should say or what rituals they should perform to help do something, they find a door that the archivist has never seen before. But Garviel Loken has seen that door before, and the door recognizes him and recognizes the identity of his armor, and it is a door that leads onto the Vengeful Spirit, and Garviel Loken leaves them in the Hall of Lang and walks onto the Vengeful Spirit, which is how the story ends.
I thought this was stupid.
And you didn't mention that we know that Guilliman's close.
Oh, yeah. So Guilliman is now in the Sol system, but because the warp miasma exists, like, they can't find Terra.
But, like, someone picks up a communication from their fleet, so they know they're coming, but they can't see where to land because the Astronomicon because the beacon isn't lit.
Right.
And so those are the two big end twists. Like, Guilliman's almost there, and Garviel Loken's on the Vengeful Spirit.
You know what happens when the beacons are lit?
What?
Gondor calls for aid.
Gondor needs all the aid it can get right now. And that is where we are at the end of part 1. It's like a super cliffhanger that just happened to me in the middle of work. I was listening to the audiobook and I was like, oh, I definitely have more than an hour left. And it was like, and then he opened that door and was on the Vengeful Spirit. Goodbye. And I was like, what?
Yep. Next book might come out in 6 months.
That's a long wait.
Yeah, I know. But we got a bunch of Primarch books that we can go back to and read.
That's great.
There you go.
So I guess we'll be back next time with...
Alfarius.
Oh, I'm excited for that.
Alfarius' Primarch book.
Okay.
So that should be pretty good.
Okay.
Heard excellent things about it.
All right.
Final scores for End in the Death?
I'm going to say 7.5.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Wow. That I think I'm going to agree.
Yeah, once. We never get the same score. Yeah.
I was going to say 8, but you know what? No.
Yeah,
I'm
I
giving
was
it
thinking
7.5.
8, but then I was like, yeah, it was a little bit flowery. And like, okay, there were things.
So the first half of this book, 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
I loved it, and I thought it was wonderful. The second half of this book.
Where would you call the half line?
When Malkador
sits on the throne. Okay,
yeah.
Fair. Okay.
Like, I like what Malkador is doing. Like, I like that he's becoming that, post-heresy people think like, oh, I hear the God Emperor speaking within me. It's like, Malkador's the first to do that.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. But, like, I did not like the Fafnir Ron Zephon parts. I feel like there were definitely some other elements that could have been
I feel
down.
I think 7.5, 7.75 is not quite 8 for me, but it's very good.
Okay. Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Okay.
All right. So maybe we'll see you at PAX, but we'll definitely see you next time when we're talking about Alfarius.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.